welcome to the Harmony Hall of Friends podcast. So, Julie Edwards, welcome to the Harmony Hall of Friends podcast. You're a trained singer, you're a director of music, you've been director of music both in the UK and abroad. You're a vocal coach, a piano coach, a trustee, and a mother with 3 musically very talented boys. So quite an impressive and diverse list of achievements. But what I'm interested in is, could you take us back to the very beginning and tell us a little bit more about what stimulated your passion for music?
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction, by the way. My love for music started when I was very young, and we used to have a small record collection at home, not very diverse. So basically, it was any musical that my parents had been to when they were getting to know each other, when they were courting, and then Beethoven symphonies, Beethoven violin concerto, and piano concertos. That's what I heard, and I used to cuddle up on a chair with my father when I was very young, and we used to listen to the music when nobody else was in the house, and I absolutely treasured those times. And one thing that was it sticks in my memory from that time is that the music was wonderful, but my father had a very prickly jumper, and in order to enjoy the music, I had to endure the jumper, but it was always worth it. Yeah, so that's how it first started.
So listening to orchestral music rather than vocal music, or?
Very much so at that point, yeah, very much so. But as I got a little bit older, I learned to play the recorder, which was my inroad into any kind of active music playing. And also, I joined a church choir. In fact, a friend and I went to knock on the new vicar's door when he came to the village and said, "Please start a choir because we want to be in one." We were about 10, I think, 9 or 10. And so that happened, and that became my passion until I went to senior school and beyond, actually.
Okay, can we just talk now about your teaching life? Because obviously you've had some great jobs, top jobs in some of the great independent schools, both in the UK and abroad. I'm really interested now a little bit more about your experience in these schools. And also, I'm interested to know how you adjusted to the kind of challenges of teaching outside the UK.
So I started my proper education when I had my first job in Walthamstow in the 1980s, and I took over the music department, which actually didn't exist in a junior high school, which was age, I think, 9 to 13, which is an age group I love working with. But it was quite an interesting experience musically. I started from scratch as a very green kind of probationary teacher, as we were called in those days. I made a lot of mistakes, and eventually I found that the best thing to do was a musical and involve all the children in the school in performing on stage. Yeah, that was my first job, and then I had several other jobs in schools in the UK, including 2 very nice prep schools, one of them where I was director of music for 10 years. And then I went overseas. I went to Kuwait, and I found that culturally, music was a very different animal in the Middle East. So particularly chorally, because of the words, the text of songs that we could sing. The history and the culture was not there in the background as in the same way as it is in the UK, because it's a fairly new country, but little by little developing. And there were people in different pockets of Kuwait who were developing that, and still are. So when I arrived in Kuwait, I had to totally rethink the repertoire side of things. A lot of my teaching had been based on liturgical music, especially in my latter prep school job. We did a lot of cathedral work, local churches, and even songs, etc. And we did the recording of Stand, which was really fun on the beach in front of the Kuwait Towers.
What about personally? Because you're in the middle of a desert, basically, and the temperature goes up to, is it 60 or 50, 60 degrees, something like that?
Yeah, 50-ish in the summer, I think. The summer was hot, but I didn't mind it. I had a kind of good air conditioning in the house, good air conditioning in the car, and I like the heat, so it worked quite well for me.
Oh, that's great. But obviously you like hot countries, you came to Thailand.
Mhm.
How was that? I mean, it's kind of very different from Kuwait, very different from England.
Again, very different. Very big school of children who went up to 18 this time. Also, very busy children and students who didn't have the free time because their timetables, their schedule and their week is so busy. So virtually all the music we did had to be done within the school day. But it was really an ideal situation in that I don't know how it works now, but they had 3 1-hour lessons of music every 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
one of those was a choral lesson. So it was basically a choir, and that worked really, really well in preparation for concerts, etc.
And did you get to see anything of Thailand, or was it all work?
No, I did. I traveled as much as I could at weekends in Bangkok and beyond, and a few countries around as well. So yeah, I wish I could have been there for longer and done more. I haven't quite finished, so I might be back.
Can we now talk about your lovely children? Because I know that they're all very talented musically. When children go into the music profession, obviously parents sometimes take a deep breath. I'm sure you weren't one of those, but how did it feel? Were you concerned?
No, actually, I wasn't. I was really proud of them. I could see how much joy they got from kind of earning money doing what they loved. But obviously, being a professional musician, especially a touring musician, it's not easy. You're away from home a lot. You're living out of a suitcase. You're on a coach a lot. You don't even necessarily know where you are, which country you're in. You get off the bus, you go into the hall, you do the concert, and you're back on the bus again. So it's not as glamorous, I think, as it seems. But I do think there's a lot of there are many positives in being a professional musician.
Oh, it's great to hear a parent talk so positively about their child going to the music profession. So now we're going to move on to Stand. Now we have some very, very important news to tell everyone because we're launching a new harmony project in Thailand, and it's called From Dusk to Dawn. Now this project is super. It's children from disadvantaged schools can audition to take part in a brand new choir called the Harmony Choir. And this choir is going to be mentored by a super group out here, the Bangkok Consort Singers. And they're going to have tuition from the choral director, Paton Sawastisuk, who's an excellent musician. In fact, he appeared on the podcast only recently. Now, the big question, you were very much involved in the making of Stand. So 2 questions. Tell us your thoughts about the project. And there's definitely going to be people watching this podcast who are going to be involved in the project. So how do you teach a choir to sing Stand, and kind of what's the process that you go through?
Okay, so my thoughts about the project is that it's brilliant, excellent. I'm really glad it's happening. The more children we can get involved, the better. It's a really fun song, and I think the fact that the basis, that the backing track was put down by a professional orchestra to a very, very high standard is a really good starting point. I had a lot of children in a room, probably getting on for 200 children in the room, and I taught them by rote, and they learnt it really, really quickly and loved it. They all went away singing it. So we learned it over about 8 weeks, like 8 or 10 weeks rehearsals, I think. And then we recorded it, as you know, because you came over to help with the recording, and we went to a recording studio, which was, I can't remember, it was a Catholic church in Kuwait, actually. I think the children had a fantastic experience. That's a once in a lifetime for many of those children.
Now, let's just talk briefly about your role as the trustee, because you're also a trustee of the charity, Harmony Action Through the Arts. And I don't know if many people know what trustees do, but essentially the trustees are the kind of, they're responsible for the governance, and it's a big responsibility. How do you view that? Because do you stay awake at night worrying about it, or do you feel relaxed? Or
I'm very relaxed about it. It's a privilege to be a trustee of Harmony. There's so many directions that it could take. I think it's going to change the life of many young people. From my own perspective, I understand that because that's what happened to me at school. More the fact that somebody understood the value of music and was able to open the door for me to step in and say, actually, you can do this. The value of that for young people, the growth that they'll experience through taking part in musical activities, whether it's singing or playing or going to a conservatoire and being supported in their learning there. You can't put a value on it. It's just amazing.
If there are young people watching this who are thinking of a career either as a musician or as a teacher, is there any advice that you received as far as that's concerned? Or if not, what kind of advice do you wish you'd received?
I think for me, one of the most important things, and I don't think I understood this until a lot more recently, is that if you are a musician, you should teach, because you learn so much about being a musician, about yourself as a musician, from teaching somebody else, and so much consolidates in your own mind and your own experience when you're showing somebody else, demonstrating to somebody else, listening to how they're playing, how they're singing. And I think I would say I've learned as much from my students as I learned from my teachers.
I think on those words, those pearls of wisdom, we can draw this to a close and let you go. But Julie Edwards, just like to thank you so much for joining us on our Hall of Friends podcast for Harmony, Action Through the Arts.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.